Nikki, we've just walked through some lovely woods and we also ended up at a lake. Tell me what experiences and feelings that you have about our experience.
Okay, so we've had an absolutely wonderful walk, as you say, through the wood and then to the lake. And we just stayed by the lake for quite some time. And I loved the way that you draw my awareness, first of all, to this lily, or many lilies in the pond, and just that kind of realization that they are there, they're very beautiful, and yet they've come from where, you know. And then the reeds just kind of reflecting in the water. And then when you said about the different shades of green, and it just became very absorbing to go into all of these different shades of green. And of course green is a very calming colour, so it made me feel very calm to just be guided further and further into these fantastic shades, like the reflection of the trees in the water was a very deep dark green, and then if you look around and in the horizon on the fields, it became much lighter. So
And any of your other senses, were they touched?
yeah, very much so. There was you drew me towards the sounds, and I found that really fantastic because you were talking about the sound. There was obviously the birds, there was the ripples of the water, there's a flapping of a moorhen's wings. But then you drew me to the backdrop of sound, and that was really opening for me. It just felt very kind of connected to sort of realise that there's this backdrop of sound, and that you can just be lost with it, very connected as well. So sounds were wonderful, yeah.
And what about some nature, some other animals that we might have seen along the way? That you could have missed, actually, if you weren't being observant, but you were very observant. So tell me a bit about those.
So on the pathway down, I was looking down, and all of a sudden there was something moving. So found that it was this tiny, tiny, tiny little frog. And so of course we stepped around it, looked at it, even filmed it, and then stepped around it. And then walking on a little bit further, we came to another frog, and then another frog, and another frog. So we had this real opportunity to just be very respectful, to walk around, to have this sense that we were sharing the ground with some very vulnerable baby little creatures. And yeah, and that felt very that again felt very connecting, because we were appreciating that they had every single right to be there just as much as us, and that we needed to just be careful and respectful towards them.
And what about some trees? What did you notice particularly about some trees that you might have remarked on?
Yeah, there were some amazing different formations of trees. There were some that were kind of meandering around a little bit as they were growing up towards the light. And whilst others were very sturdy and strong and definite, knew where they were going. There was some fantastic textures. There was one that was very kind of it was very mysterious, really. It was quite dark. It was dark in colour, but it had a very dark sort of feeling about it. The texture of the bark was very interesting. And then you'd go walk along, and all of a sudden there'd be something very kind of smooth, and so the variety was incredible. And then all of a sudden there'd be a little tiny sprig of a holly bush growing, or brambles where blackberries were going to come through. So much variety in the wood. So it felt very, very alive there, and full, really full of nature.
Nikki, it was a pleasure and a privilege to walk with you. Thank you.
And to you too, Nick.